So thanks, Nick, for offering to do this presentation for us. As you can see, we circulated the invitation far and wide. So just to introduce Nick, Nick Allen is an Industry Procurement Advisor at Health Innovation Manchester, and Nick provides procurement advice to SMEs who have innovations that have the potential to be implemented through the NHS. And today is very kindly offered to come and give us this presentation on the NHS Procurement Conundrum, a guide to the pitfalls, the gatekeepers, brick walls, and how to navigate them. So if you've got any questions as we go through, put them in the chat. When we get to the end, we can ask Nick those, or if you want to raise your hand at the end of the presentation and ask a question, then just unmute yourself and we'll go from there. So over to you, Nick. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is this on screen now? Can you see that?
Yeah, but not in presentation mode.
Okay, let's do that. Hello, everybody. I know I saw some of the names coming in, Joanne Thomas and Paul Hammer, and maybe a few others that I know already. So I hope this next 20 odd, well, about half an hour is going to be full of fun and interesting chat. I've been involved with the NHS for about 20 years. I was the head of procurement at Basingstoke hospitals down south of England, and I'd come from the private sector where I had you know, managing directors and operations directors always, you know, banging the fist on the table, trying to squeeze savings out of what we bought and what have you, because our competition was cheaper than us. And when I was down in the south of England, I was working in Hungerford, and I was working for a private company, and somewhere, don't know how, but somewhere down the line, I got involved with the NHS, and I was the head of procurement. And when I was the head of procurement, I was amazed at the time, it's changed now, that the buyers that I had, or we had, they didn't particularly have any sort of need or enthusiasm to save money for the hospital. And it used to upset me. I used to go home, and my wife now, Barbara, she used to say, calm down. Anyway, I ended up getting a company in who automated the quotation and tender process, because everything was done by you know, letters and fax and everything them days, or sealed envelopes, sealed bids. Anyway, I got this company in, and I ended up working with them, and we produced something called multi-quote. I think I even gave the name because we were getting multiple quotes to automate the process and get quotes in faster, and get on with other work. And it was such a success that I introduced it to Frimley Park, Plymouth, Portsmouth and Southampton hospitals. And after about a year of me being down there, because I was travelling down and coming back, Sunday down, Friday back, etc., I decided to come home lock, stock and barrel, as I was fed up of the travel. Anyway, the company came and found me and said, look, we can't get this into any other hospitals. We're sort of stuck. Will you come and work for us? So they made me an offer, and I took them on board, and I ended up learning how to sell procurement software. And I got it in 60 hospitals over a 9-year period. I went through 3 cars. So when I joined Health Innovation Manchester as the Industry Procurement Advisor, I was sort of always touched by the SMEs and the new things coming through, because I used to sort of find it hard to work with some of the big players who in my eyes, use the NHS as a bank almost. And if ever I could get a smaller company in to do something which had less cost, was just as good, if not better, with a good patient outcome, I went with them. And I made sure that the business case and the value proposition stacked up in favour of that decision making. So where we are now over the last 5 years with me working with SMEs, I know that the NHS, when you've got something, there is this procurement thing that you have to get through. You know, how can we buy it? Someone's got something, and how can we buy it? Well, there is a conundrum here. So that's why this presentation is this what I call a procurement conundrum, and how to win mindsets to supply. And one of the things that I do talk to my colleagues about, and seniors and people in CCG land, about, if you keep doing the same things week in, week out, and expect different outcomes. Well, it's insanity, and that's his sort of theory, or his explanation, definition of insanity. So I remember going to one of the CCGs in Manchester once. I was invited to a board meeting, and I thought, well, I'll put this slide on. So I got in there, there was like 14 GPs and some very senior people there, and I only had 4 or 5 slides. And I gave myself a bit of an intro, and I said, what do you guys know about innovation? And there was a deadly silence that never material, never came to anything. And I had to sort of like put this up and talk about it. If you're just going to keep doing things in Manchester or in your area and not look at new things, you're going to be left behind. Now where does it all start? Well, in procurement, where things start, even behind the scenes of where we've never even touched upon, there may well be some of you guys who are on the call today who are in academia or in innovation or part of an SME or a company. You may well be been talking with sort of senior in the health industry, been talking to senior clinicians about some new technology, about a new way of doing things. And when it hits procurement, that clinician or clinicians or department has to go to procurement, because in procurement we have to follow European guidelines. There is a new paper out at the moment, a green paper, which will turn into a white paper about coming in Brexit or coming out of Brexit. What can we do differently and better in procurement over the European rules previously? And there's some good stuff in there, but people have to develop a sort of a documentation pack, a specification, and that normally involves a team of people, and then a selection criteria or an awarding criteria is set up. And typically, as I've put there, 50% quality, 40% price, and a new one, social value. What can that company bring into the arena locally for business, for maybe taking people on if they were moving into the area to do something? And this is typically for procurement over £183,000. And how they use this is, if a contract is for 3 years, well, anything that was over 180,000 for a year, that would be nearly 500,000. If it was something like £70,000 a year, that still qualifies for having to do an OJEU tender, official journal of the European Union. So it's quite tight, and the public sector does have sort of red tape and rope and all kinds, handcuffs, if you like, for procurement people. They can't just go and, that sounds good, what do you think? Go to the finance director, yeah, do it. That doesn't happen. In the private sector, it does happen like that. You build on your supplier database and you build wonderful relationships, and people get to know how you as a business run, and you get to know how they run. And when you're in the need of doing something differently, they're the first to jump in and help you. The selection questionnaire is also part of the sort of process of how when the winning bids come in, when all the bids come in, you sort of get ready to look at the scores and everything. The ITT is an invitation to tender that goes out based upon your selection questionnaire and selection award criteria, and then you sort of advertise that on the OJEU website, which is TED, Tenders Electronic Daily. And then you get the expressions of interest in following the invitation to tender, and that's when you sit down at a designated date, because there's always a time span, and you sit down with the team members that drew up the original specification, and are going to sort of sift through the tenders themselves, looking at the price, and we have something which is called MEET, most economically advantageous tender, and that can be based on a number of things that are in the selection and award criteria, the price, social value, etc. There is also So that was the route the procurement people use. But then there's routes for the SMEs, the people out there. What to keep a sort of an eye upon is, obviously, I just mentioned the OG, the 10 Days European Daily, but there's another thing that people should be looking at, Contracts Finder. So if there's anyone in today's little gathering here who's not far away from bringing something to the table for the NHS, get yourself on Contracts Finder. Go and have a look at some of the older tenders that may have been placed on there that might touch upon what you do, and have a little think, have a little read. For digital services, if it's a service relating to apps or platforms, you name it, NHS Shared Business Services have got a couple of platforms for their digital frameworks, and they're Salford based. NHS Supply Chain is another route. They're embedded into the new future operating model, which is 11 towers of supply, which I'll touch upon in a few more slides. There's 11 towers of supply, and they're run by tower frame providers now. And there's not just NHS Supply Chain run it, they only run 2 towers. There's 6 medical towers, 3 non-medical, and 2 capital. And also the other opportunity is, if you've got something that's really unique, is to get hold of an individual trust. Find out who the lead clinician is in the area, or find out who the head of procurement is. And a little bit later on, I'll be discussing how I used to get into trusts when I started to sell that procurement software. Another way to infiltrate the NHS is for people to approach the nearest academic health science network, which Health Innovation Manchester is one of 15, and they form, all 15 of them, the AHSN Atlas, which is geographically around the country where they all are, and approach those AHSNs, because it's within our interests to help innovation get into the NHS. And some of the questions that we need to ask, and you need to think about as a potential helper of academia getting to the NHS, helper to an SME getting towards the NHS, is how well does this proposed device work compared to what they use now? And the University of Manchester and Health Innovation Manchester might be able to help find out some of that information as to what happens now, how much does it cost, how many days is a patient in hospital normally, what's the procedures, you know, etc., what's the national tariff, so that you don't spend an awful lot of time, wasting effort if it's not going to come to anything at the end of the day. And obviously, how much is this? What have they got now? And I want to touch on something in a moment with regards to the pricing. So I get asked this a lot. I put this in because about what the winning formula is. A bit like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the winning formula. If it's a lower price and a better outcome, it's a definitely gold ticket, if you like. If it's the same price and a better outcome, it's still a winning ticket. I'm going to skip the pink one down to the losing formula, where people aren't going to get sort of excited. Is if it's the same price and the same outcome, why are we all bothering to put effort into putting your product in as opposed to an existing product? And every now and again, there's something that's a worse price and the same outcome. It's never going to see the light of day. So I was in Birmingham one day doing a little talk like this, and this chap said, well, what happens if it's a slightly higher price and a better outcome? And I thought, you know what, he's right. So that is a winning formula. We do pay sometimes a little bit higher, better outcome. And there's a big movement now. I'm working with some senior procurement people in the NHS about value-based procurement. And that is about, slightly higher price. And just an example. So say someone came to the procurement team and it was a hip joint, and the hip joint was £150 more expensive than the existing hip joints. And I'll pick on a big supplier called Stryker, American company, and they sell the Exeter hip which was devised with Exeter University many years ago, and they devised this hip, everything in its design and the way it works, and the steel used, special steel. And imagine it's about 500, it's about £675 for one hip, left and right, £675 each. And so if someone comes with a hip that's £150 more expensive, well, the normal thing would be for the procurement people to put up a sort of crossed hands and say, go away, don't darken my door again, it's too expensive. But if the company said, well, with the striker hip, the patient is in hospital for nearly 5 nights because they go through the buttock and put that one in, and there's a lot longer healing time. But with our hip, we go through the groin and there's only in for 2 nights. So if you work on about £600 a night overstay when you're in an arena of, you know, surgical and orthopedic surgeons, as opposed to an overnight stay where you're just being monitored, that's about 400, 450. Well, that's saving 3 nights at 600, that's £1,800. And the unit, the hip joint was £150 more expensive. Well, I think procurement need to wake up there and say, this is, you know, crazy, let's go for it, because you know, that's going to be beneficial to the trust, and it's going to be beneficial to the patient. Right, this is a classic case study or a testimonial of how we work in Health Innovation Manchester. So a few years ago, whilst all you lovely people were doing your great things, we were doing a nice little great thing on this one. So a company called Eurolift came to us and they said they'd met a urologist in Stepping Hill Hospital in Stockport, and they'd been working with him, and he'd been taking this product off them, using it for private patients. So when men have some prostate issues, first of all, they don't openly talk about them because men aren't very good at talking about things that go on down that area of the anatomy. So what happens is they keep quiet, and Andrew, the surgeon, the urologist surgeon, was mentioning the fact that this is fabulous because the guy comes in and he obviously has some discussions around what this entails and stuff, and it takes about 30 odd minutes per procedure, and within about an hour the guy can go home. And with the previous procedure, it's scalpels and blood and all kinds of drugs and issues down below for 2.7 nights, they call it. I don't know where they get to, but call it 3 nights. And there's lots of issues, you know, follow up and what have you. So we saw it as a benefit. So when he tried to move it into the normal run of procedure or whatever, he was told he couldn't because there was no tariff payment for these products, which are these little implants. So we had to get hold of the CCG, Clinical Commissioning Group. We invited them to a party, which was tea and biscuits, at Andrew's office with the supplier. And they explained how it did, what it did, and how it worked. And they saw it as a bit of a no-brainer to get involved with. So they said, right, we need to change the code on the tariff system, which took nearly 6 to 9 months, I kid you not. But in the meantime, Eurolift managed to get this onto the one of the ITP, Innovation Technology Payment Schemes, or it might have been ITT at the time, in Innovation Technology Tariff Schemes, and that enabled people to procure it. The tariff was changed quickly, and lots of people in Stepping Hill Hospital, and we've extended it to all the other acute hospitals, and we shared information and shared lots of time. And the people of the men of Greater Manchester who have these issues with their prostate have started to come forward in their droves, and we're certainly helping them and helping their families, because I should imagine it's not a nice thing to endure you know, for the family if dad or your granddad's got an issue like this. Now, this little schematic, I used to draw this out every time I physically met with someone. How does it all work, Nick? Well, what's going to happen next, and what can you do to help us? So the orange pipeline there is an entry point with those little UFOs there, like flying saucers. That's the supplier coming in. And we meet the supplier. We offer, I and my good colleague, Paul Hammer, offer procurement advice and clinical advice. Paul's very senior in the things that he's done in the commercial world. He's even invented wound care products and stuff. So it's always good to have him on board. And whilst he spends a lot of time, sometimes when we meet online and he sort of blows my praises, I've got an opportunity now to share that back, to say it's good working with him, to listen to his insight and to listen to his clinical side. And it always sort of enables me to understand and maybe take a step back sometimes when needed. Otherwise, I suppose I could be like a knight on a white horse with, you know, I think that's got shining armor, but I haven't brought my spear with me. Right, so if it's CE ready, a product, we can fast track it up towards NHS Shared Business Services, and we've got teams of senior clinical sort of advisors there that can help us. They'd even go into the hospital systems and take it with them and show certain people and maybe get some evaluation going. And if it's a sort of fast moving consumable that's different and CE marked, we can force it down the old NHS supply chain route, which is now that new 11 tower sort of system that I mentioned before: 6 clinical, 3 non-clinical, 2 capital. And we can broker conversations and sort of help cajole, persuade, you know, that some of the people there to have a look at some of the products. One of the suppliers a few years ago, going back to 2018, doesn't time fly, was a Manchester-based company, and they had a product that they were working on around district nurse scheduling. You wouldn't think, would you, that something like that would be something that was wonderful when you think of the NHS and working on people. But it's sometimes some of the outer things that can help and, you know, reduce time and make things better. So it was coming up to November, and I got an invite to go to the Midland Hotel, which is quite posh if anyone's ever been there. And it was an evening of wonderment with dicky bows on and suits and ladies in lovely dresses and all looking great. And I said to them, hey, there's an Excellence in Supply Awards run by the Northwest Procurement Development. Why don't you apply? So I got them the link. This is about 3 weeks before they applied, and then look, I never thought anything of it then. So there I was at the award dinner, and people coming in, and there's, you know, introductions and stuff, and we all had a lovely dinner and a few drinks, and then it came to the awards, and lo and behold, there's Andrew and his colleague there gets the Innovation Award for non-clinical, and then it goes on to others and others, and then right at the end, they only won the Supplier of the Year award for their excellent work in helping Salford Hospital with their, you know, the district nurse scheduling, which reduced an awful lot of time of a nurse going to A to C to J to, you know, instead of going A, B, C, D, closing down on the mileage, but also the sort of the back office, all the stuff on the visits was all concise and all typed up, and it was rather good. So that was a good plus, and how we helped that supplier. They originally came to us with an idea, and I think we even managed to get them some funding to help with the trial at Salford. And Rachel Dunscombe, who was very innovative CIO there at the time, she has a big part to play in how this particular supplier came on board. Now there's another route, and this particular route is the Health Tech Connect platform, introduced about 18 months ago, because the Department of Health and NHS England were listening to people like us maybe and others complain that, you know, you can go through the AHSNs, but then we're still not getting into the hospital settings. So they created a platform, and I sit with the other AHSNs on a Monday afternoon, and things that have been submitted onto the platform, a glorified spreadsheet at the moment, by the way, we go through it and say, right, who can look at this one? It's Salford based, so it might be me. This is London based. This is Northeast based. So someone from the Northeast particular. So they'll do a first stage review and report back the findings to the rest of the team the following or 2 weeks time. And we start looking at how we could potentially, has anyone got an appetite for this product? Is there anybody got any contacts that you've got in the hospital settings that you look after who'd like to maybe have a look at this? So it's sort of like a little pushing the sort of the penny down the board, if you like, trying to see if people can take things on. And I recently got in touch with one of the tower providers in the green there and talked to them about how the Health Tech Connect platform for me and my colleagues isn't working as well as it should be. And I talked to them about a dynamic purchasing system. So there is a dynamic purchase, by the way, a dynamic purchasing system is a system that's pull away from tenders and quotes. It's a little system that, well, it's a platform framework that allows speedier in and onto adoption. And it's sort of set up like a framework, but it's for faster tracking, if you're with me. And there is one out there at the moment called the Health and Social Care APPS DPS, Dynamic Purchasing System, and it's run by London Procurement Partnership. So what do? Get hold of London Procurement Partnership and say, what's this new DPS you've got? Oh yeah, who are you? Nick Allen does it. So I'm a fellow of the Institute of Patent Supply, so that does carry a little bit of weight now. And when I was asking about my fees that came in last week, I just happened to mention that, and she said, well, that's one of the reasons why you're paying a little bit more than FCIPS, Nick. So that made me laugh. So I used that to get in. They were listening to me, and I said, we have an awful lot of people coming through us with digital solutions for things, and we sort of hit a bit of a brick wall. You know, what are we going to do with this? We talked to the trusts in Manchester, we talked to our hierarchy in Health Innovation Manchester, and we don't seem to get anywhere, and it's very, very frustrating. But we have to understand why it's frustrating. There's all kinds of things going on that we don't know about. So that's why coming here today is exciting for me and Paul. I'm sure Paul's on there. Is Alessandro and Becky opening up to potentially, if we have a bit of an issue with something, I'm not saying that they're going to help us with apps and things, but there might be something that they can help us with, and vice versa, that we might be able to help them with, whereas previously we didn't maybe know what they did, and we didn't know what they did, and they didn't know what we did. So we basically managed to get the London Procurement Partnership to share how you get onto the dynamic purchasing system, and they've teamed up with a Manchester-based company called Orcha, O-R-C-H-A, as in the whale. Some of you may know of Liz Ashall Payne. She came through our Innovation Nexus portal, back to that pipe before with the little flying saucers, the spaceships going through there, the suppliers. And I remember her coming to me on day one years and years ago and saying, I've got this idea, I want an app library. I'm very passionate about it. And I remember her coming in to see me in the coffee bar on the ground floor of City Labs. She was going off to a CCG, and she was going to charge them a penny per head per populace. And I said, whoa, I can't let you go out of here and charge a penny a head. You need to charge more. And that's from a purchasing person. You know, she wasn't going to make any money, and she wasn't going to be able to sustain with that. Anyway, she went away, she rejigged, and Fab knew she got a contract with them, and she's gone on from strength to strength now. I think she employs way over 30 people, and she's in several countries. in Europe, including our own country. So they've amalgamated with London Procurement Partnership with the DPS, and so now someone comes to us, fabulous app, signpost them to London Procurement Partnership. They help them on board. They get the app analysed and checked out and everything from Orca. I don't know whether they pay a small fee. And then if it's over 65% rated, they get on the platform. When they're on the platform, don't sit back, get in touch with people. You know, we've got this app, it's on the, to procure it, you just need to get onto the LPP DPS. So it's another route. If there's a provider who's in a particular field and there's several providers, there has to go to a mini competition, which allows them all to bid for that little piece of work. So that's a good thing. So back to that green bar there, the 11 towers of supply. When I was talking to the London Procurement Partnership, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be good if you could have a med-surg DPS? And that would really tick all the boxes. It'd help Paul and I. It would help potentially people coming through the University of Manchester's pipeline, that they know somewhere down the line there's a route to get into the NHS, a proper route that works. So I had a meeting last week with the CPP, which is one of the tower providers, and it's always good to keep good networks and keep friendly with people. And the managing director is Helen Lyle, and she's a good procurement person who I've known for 20 years. And she gave me the time of day in a board meeting, and I discussed how the platform works with the LPP, London Procurement Partnership, who they know. And I said, wouldn't it be good? I said, this is just an idea. Wouldn't it be good if you ran the DPS for med-surg? Because I'd already tried it with the London Procurement Partnership. Most of their clinically procurement people, skilled people, had moved into the 11 towers system. So it was all business and digital people left in London Procurement Partnership and some other big procurement hubs, because this new FOM, future operating model, the 11 towers of supply, is the route to go down now. So anyway, I've had a good meeting with them, and they want me to discuss it with Supply Chain Coordination Limited, the blue little channel there, who was supposed to police the Health Tech Connect platform. So hopefully I've got a little bit of kudos, or I will get a bit of kudos, in sort of helping bring about some conversations that may lead to a DPS for medical surgical products. So my magnificent 7, I'm just going to have a slurp of tea. Oh, that was nice. My magnificent 7. What's the, and Paul's involved in this. He's helped contribute to this. Never forget a good man. What is the, we ask people, and maybe ask yourselves, what is the problem you're addressing? And what is the cost to the NHS trust or the NHS of running with that problem? What's the solution? How does it work? Have you got it working anywhere else? Any testimonials? And then what is the cost of your solution? And another little important thing here, trusts have a SIP, savings challenge, cost improvement program, 4 billion a year, divvied up between all hospital trusts. The procurement teams in every trust are working every day of the week with all departments trying to get savings towards that SIP, 4 billion, divvied up between all the trusts in England. Example, NHS Trust, Manchester University Foundation Trust, SIP challenge saving 75-80 million pounds a year. 75-80 million pounds a year. Now, you can't always, I nearly said screw the supplier down then. You can't always squeeze the supplier down to year on year to reduce the cost of a hip from 675 to 575 to 4. You can't do it. It bottoms out. You can't get blood out of a stone. And they've been doing this for several years already. So we have to look at innovation. We have to look at new pathways, look at new doing things differently. It could be, you know, still using the same devices, but doing it in a different way. You know, why do one patient when you could do 3? look at the theatres in America. They can do 3 patients in one go, but the theatres are a whole lot different. You know, in what way are they different? Well, why don't we find out? I used to be a process engineer in Ford, South Africa. My God, that was, you know, I used to be an engineer before that. I was 24 when I went there. I went from a frying pan into a fire. Every time there was a problem with a car, and it could have been panels, I was working on the Ford Sierra, you couldn't just, if the panel was wrong, you couldn't just say, oh, these inner door panels for the Ford Sierra are wrong. We'll have to stop production and put our feet up. You had to do an engineering change, emergency one there and then. What is the fix? Because we need to be making cars. And then you would then move that particular fix up the tree to get another 24 hours. And then you'd, within a week or so, you get it put into the process, and that would be it. In the NHS, it doesn't quite work like that. It's very slow moving, like the plates of the earth. And when there's a tsunami, or when something breaks, or when there's an earthquake, something happens. So innovation is pretty key. And I'm sure that a lot of people listening today have got some great ideas, and hopefully by the likes of me and Paul showing some expertise, and Joanne Thomas, who's on the call there, showing her expertise, helping, just putting oil on those cogs or the wheels to make things get through a little bit faster. And another thing in this time and age is we're asking people, is there a COVID benefit? Is this a device that allows remote monitoring? The people don't have to come into the hospital setting, virtual consultations, the use of AR, you know, lots of things that could be helping. Now, this is the fun bit. I've got claim to fame for getting my wife said to me, you're pretty good at getting into places. Could you get me into Harrods? And I said, what? She said, I've got these complementary therapy tools that lend themselves to getting into Harrods. And I said, good grief, Harrods. So these are Egyptian healing rods. I won't go into it too much. One's zinc, one's copper, yin and yang, and they've got all kinds of crystals in them, different ones, different weights and percentages, and they really chill you out. And I must say they do, because I use them. Anyway, so what I did was I had to get hold of the Harrods themselves, and I wanted it was Al Fayed was in charge at the time, about 5 years ago, and he's now like lifelong president, and someone else runs the show now. Anyway, I found out who his PA was, so I managed to ring, and I said, hi, my name's Nick Allen. Would you kindly advise me what the correct protocols are to initiate a meeting, discuss what my wife's products are that she sells, and in relationship to how we could be able to, you know, get into your supply chain, into your store. So she said, oh, what are those products? And I said, ancient Egyptian healing rods. Oh my God, she said. And I think she was Egyptian as well. And she said, Mr. Fayed will be interested in this. He's Egyptian. And I said, oh, right. She said, you need to speak to a director called Saeed, whatever his name was. And I said, look, could you do me a favor? Could you do an email to Saeed, copy me in, and that might help, you know, get us you know, onto a meeting. 6 weeks later, me and my wife are on the train at Runcorn, going down to the Big Apple, and the down the smoke, whatever you want to call it. And we arrived at Harrods. You don't go in the store; it's over the road. These big offices, and in we went. So my job is to make sure that the presentation is working, and I'm doing all the type, you know, hitting the keyboards. My wife's doing all the talking and the demonstration. So just before we're about to start, Saeed's in, and other directors in. There's a couple of ladies. My wife's standing up by the screen. He puts his hand on my arm there, and he says, Nick, he says, may I ask a question? How did you get this on today? And I told him the story that I've just told you there. Was I contacted Al Fayed's PA, ran through, I won't say it word verbatim, and he smiled, and then a couple of them giggled, and he said, right, carry on. He said, that's amazing. And I kid you not, I used this when I came into selling the procurement software MultiQuote, contacting a head of procurement. Hi, my name is Nick Allen. Would you let me know what the correct protocols are? Because they don't get spoken to like that. it throws them on the back foot. Who's this? Protocols? Oh, normally someone's giving it loads down the phone and they're too busy to talk to them. So I would gently bully them into seeing me, getting a date from them. And that's my lot. My voice is going. Any questions, please fire away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nick. That was very interesting and informative talk for everybody. I think I can speak from everybody in the call today that is very relevant to us, and especially if we manage to find that route from the university or SMEs into the NHS, and you can facilitate that going forward. So if anyone has any questions for Nick, if you could either raise your hand or put that in the chat, that I'm sure that Nick will be able to answer that. There is a couple of them already in the chat. From Scott Harrison from Affinity Biomarkers, an SME based in Alderley Park. Scott is asking, at what stage is it best for the SME to try and engage? And Nick, it would be great if you can also expand these to academics. So both academics and SMEs, how early or how late is best to approach this route that you just described in the talk today?
Right, that's always a difficult one, but I was talking to some of my procurement colleagues. They would like to know, you know, up front sometimes as to what is out there, what is going on. Sort of sell the sizzle, not the steak, I call it. And also, you do need to have, if it's in the clinical world, find a clinical champion and talk to the clinical champion. So if it's a person from academia and they're going down the route of creating something, get a clinical champion that sort of is with you on your quest for what it is that you're wishing to get from A to Z, you know, from the whole thing, and then get the clinical champion to talk to the procurement teams. Just touch point. Bear in mind, it could be a year off, it could be 2 years off. It's always good to know what is in that pipeline. It is like I should imagine someone could bolt another pipeline onto mine, where it is you guys, because I do hear stories. Sometimes people have spent a lot of time on something and it hasn't come to anything. So it's always about what is the problem that you're addressing. And if it is seen as a problem, it's well worth pursuing and you know, executing all the way along. But do bring some people on your journey, because even every 3 months or every quarter, every 6 months, if it's a lot, if you know it's going to be a long journey, keeping those people in the loop, they might be influential or helping you get further down, get the pipeline, as it were, towards the finishing line.
That's great. Thank you. I don't know if Scott want to add anything to that question. If you're on the call, Scott.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with that one. Thanks.
Good. You also ask, how do you sell value rather than selling price?
Right. How do you sell value? Right. Well, selling value is something that Paul, who's online, we sort of hit upon this a couple of years ago, a value proposition. So if somebody is selling a car that has got 4 wheels and an engine, and it's made out of a particular material, and the rubber is not, you know, grade A rubber for tires or whatever, but I'm selling it at £5,000, and people are going to go, wow, £5,000 for a car, this is amazing. But then somebody is selling the same type of car for £6,100, and it's got proper rubber grade tires, it's got proper steel that doesn't rust, or, you know, it's got a rust proof whatever on it. The windscreen, you know, the bird hits it, it's not going to shatter. It's got a good fuel. So it's selling something that might be a little bit more expensive, but the value is there, and it can be proven by stats. So, you know, that car that's selling for 6,100 in my analogy, has got some stats upon its, you know, miles per gallon or kilometers per litre, whatever. And the other one, you know, if it's so cheap, that'll have stats against it, but they won't stack up as much. So if it was clinical devices, could be drugs even. So it could well be that diabetes patients cost this country so many £billion a year, and the current drugs that they use to help them with their, you know, their journey account to X amount of pounds. But then you add on all the other charges and costs looking after diabetes patients, and it costs, you know, I've seen figures of like £100,000 per annum or whether you can find this information like this. And you came up with a drug maybe that does away with certain things. There was a gentleman that came to the trust last year, or it was early last year, and what did he call it? The not the false pancreas. It was a
artificial.
The artificial pancreas. Thanks, Paul. And what it was it was a little implant that goes under the skin. It's then goes to it's got a Bluetooth to an app, and then there's a pump on the belt, which it got a little cable to the little implant thing, like is it a cannula or a whatever? I'm not very good on the technicalities of the medical stuff that's used. Anyway, so when the person's blood sugar levels go down, it's picked up with the device in just under the skin. It sends a message to the app that sends a message to the insulin pump that pumps insulin or what the right amount of stuff into the body. I mean, so there's a cost for that, but then you weigh up the cost of what we do now to hold. This could revolutionize how, you know, people who have diabetes get on with things. There's a stigma to injection, there's a stigma to all the things that they have to do. So this is a guy called Roman, can't think of his surname, he's from down in Cambridge University Hospitals down that way. So, you know, the value, how do you know, explain value, or how do you sort of show it? Look at what they do now, look at what the total cost is of what they do now, look at what you've got. It might well be expensive, but can it reduce the overall costs? Can you provide it through a value proposition?
Okay. I'll just add something as well, Nick, and also give a little plug, because hi everybody, Alessandro has invited me on a later session to give a presentation, and I think I'll touch a bit on value and how it's measured. But to give you a little taster, you might have heard of NICE, which is the National Institute of Clinical and Healthcare Excellence. And they have, their role is basically to look at different treatments, technologies, drugs, and advise the NHS on the evidence behind them in terms of value. So if you want to kind of get ahead of the game before my presentation, you want to do a little bit of homework. If you look up something called a QALY, which is a quality adjusted life year, QALY, it's a way, it's quite a crude measure, but it's a kind of measure that you can use for everything like hip replacements or hearing aids. And what it stands for is 1 year of perfect health is one QALY. And if you have certain health problems, you'll maybe have half a QALY or 0.1 of a QALY, etc. And NICE have a threshold where they say that if a treatment costs £30,000 roughly, and it buys one extra QALY for a patient, then that is cost effective in their terms, and they will recommend that for the NHS. But that's the simple answer to how you sell value rather than you know, look at cost. But when I give my presentation, you realise sometimes it's a little bit more complicated, and sometimes you can present things in different ways as well.
Cheers, Paul.
No, it's great. I was sitting in the background. I've enjoyed your talk very much, Nick. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. And yeah, the presentation that Paul was mentioning is part of the Translation Manchester seminar series. I think you're on next month, Paul. I can't remember the exact date, but if we do have a Jim, perhaps, oh, there you go. It's on the 28th of April at 1 o'clock, and you can register from following our website. There should be a link for the newsletter, and you get information about that. Or perhaps, Jim, you can post the registration link on the chat if you got time. So we got some more questions in the chat. We got a few more minutes left on the call, so perhaps we can do a couple more. There is one from Louise Farran from the Innovation Factory at Tech Transfer Office of the university. We often have early stage tech which is not yet ready for the NHS procurement. Are you able to advise early on what we need to think about routes into the NHS? So yeah, that's something we covered that a little bit earlier on, but if either Nick or Paul can expand a little bit on that, that would be good. I think you mentioned before that there is a lot of information that can be easily gathered by just contacting you in terms of costs, current costs of the NHS. So what's the route to get that information? Is it directly, or
if they're not ready, and you know you're on the journey, and you know you're predicting when you're going to be ready, you still need to be maybe touching base. You can either touch base with the AHSN, which is us. You might not be advisable to touch base with a procurement person in a hospital setting unless you've got that. If you've got the clinical champion, and the clinical champion has embraced one of the members of the procurement team early doors, go that route again. But certainly come through our Health Innovation Manchester, and we can do our utmost and find out if you need. You could almost do a mini value proposition, or like an upfront value proposition as to where you're going with this. What is it? What does it do? And we might be able to help find out some information based upon the cost of operations, the cost of product, the cost of service, to help you along. Because at the end of the day, we're here to try and get people over the line. You're there, I'm guessing, to get them towards the line as well, to help them, and all about maybe bringing about health, wealth, being in Manchester, as in, people with innovative entrepreneurial skills, setting up companies in Manchester, employing the people of Manchester, and we're the same. If we can get someone over the line, and it has an impact on better patient outcomes, and it reduces costs to the NHS, and/or it's in the value-based procurement and bringing in the value, we're all about that, and we'd like to hear about it. And at any stage of the process, drop us a line, talk to us, have a half hour, an hour online, and show us what you've got so far. And if you've got any questions, we could go away and come back, and if we'll share that with Alessandro and Becky, because we want them to let their leaders know that we're doing a good job all round, all of us.
Yeah, I would say get in touch early. I mean, one of the I remember a number of years ago, the laboratories at Daresbury through STFC, they contacted us, and they were looking at translation of some of the kit that they have that fly on satellites, for example, or with astronauts, so life support. And I remember one, it was a gamma ray detector, I think, and they were looking at maybe using it for mammography. So sometimes it's interesting to look at basic research and see whether there is a practicality. And sometimes we can very easily and quickly say, no, it's not right, and it stops a lot of effort, or give some guidelines. So if I was to make up an example, say for some reason in the NHS, we only bought mobile phones that were white. Maybe there was a reason that infection control are easier to clean. We don't want you to produce a blue case for your phone if you're developing a phone, because it's not what we want. You're going to waste a lot of time. If we can tell you what the specifications are early, you then produce a product that we want, which is good for us and it's good for you because it's likely to be more successful. And on the procurement side, again, thinking of you, as a research community, the EU, and we're still going to be involved with the Horizon program, it seems. I was involved with some projects in the past called pre-commercial procurement, where procurement organisations across Europe are aiming to procure goods and services that don't currently exist. So it's not a product off the shelf. It's more meeting a need. So if you Google PCP, you'll see that there's quite a lot of projects out there now, and that is money basically to develop something that doesn't exist. So it's the very name says it, pre-commercial procurement. So there are opportunities, I think, for researchers really to start to produce products and services at a very early stage. But I'd back up what Nick says. Get in touch, and we'll try and help you as much as we can.
Thank you for that, and also thank you for offering to help. Nick, did you have something to add?
No, I totally agree with Paul there. No.
So we only got like 3 minutes and 3 questions actually. Let's see if we can.
I'm all right going over if everyone else is, but it's up to you.
Happy to stay over for anyone that is interested. Perhaps in these few minutes we can at least cover the one that have been asked. That seems to be quite straightforward. How many times a year for the NHS tender invitation? James Sang is asking.
How many times
a year? I think I don't know if James is still on the call, but is it about how many times do you get an opportunity to get tender invitation? Is that the question?
How many times a year do you get an opportunity to tender in a year? Well, it depends on what your product and services are, and every hospital goes out to tender at different stages. So Manchester University hospitals might go out to tender for, I don't know, let's just say theatre consumables. Let's just pick on that one. And yet Stepping Hill Hospital might have gone out to tender 18 months ago, and so Hospital might. So, it's not all about just selling to Greater Manchester hospitals. You can sell abroad, a wider geographical area. So that's why I mentioned Contracts Finder. Get on Contracts Finder now. It's a government website. Google it, Contracts Finder, and have a look at, type in the things that you're looking to attack or fix the problem for, and see the hospitals that have put things out. Some of them will be old, but you'll get a flavour for how it was worded, who won it. It'll show you like this was awarded to Joe Blogg's so-and-so's. So do that.
Thank you, Nick. One last question, perhaps from Colette from the BRC. Some of our researchers have been asking about care pathway analysis with regards to some technologies they want to explore. Is that something you can help with?
Yes, we might be able to help with that. Yeah, we've got other people within our organisation. So Paul and I are looking at the SMEs coming towards us with their products ready, but we also have really good, clever and helpful colleagues across a wide spectrum of things. Some things going on in Manchester about dementia, about mental health, obesity, alcoholism, and other things. And we will be able to, we're not experts at everything, hold our hands up. We'll be able to maybe, network or signpost to one of them and say, look, one of the people working with Alessandro and Becky in the University of Manchester, they've asked this question, could you help us? And they'll be more than willing to help us provide some information for you.
And I think as well, I might just touch on some of the information sources when I talk at another seminar. There's loads of stuff. If you've got a specific inquiry, shoot it through. But NICE do publish a lot on care pathways. I know it's difficult sometimes they will publish recommended care pathways. And I don't know if you've come across Map of Medicine. That's a kind of flowcharty thing. I suppose where it becomes difficult is where you see this idealized care pathway and you think, is that what is done in reality in the with all the pressures in the NHS? And that's where if there is an unmet need, but it doesn't come out of that nice, clean care pathway, we want to feed that back to you so that you can help to solve it. Yeah.
I might get them to come across to you and speak to you specifically about the things. So we had a scientific advisory board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and one of the biggest things that came out of it was that we need to do a little bit more around health economics, specifically, but also, you know, trying to tie into the existing care pathways, because I think some of the really early stage research that we're doing at the moment, we haven't really thought far enough ahead to how we can try and drive that into the clinic.
And sometimes the research looks at the care pathway and says, why are you doing all this? We've got something that can eliminate all of those steps.
Yeah.
And that's where we get really excited, because that eliminates cost, it eliminates you know, resource that you can spend on something else. You know, there's always something else to do. So good.
Good, thank you. I just didn't know if you were just solely working with companies, but it's good to know that us clinicians and academics can get in contact as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no probs.
Good. And I hope that today has been the beginning of a two-way communication between us at the university and the BRC, we call it, and you guys at Health Innovation Manchester. So this is why we arranged this meeting in the first place. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I've seen a few hands raising, but then I couldn't really see who raised them. So I apologize if anyone had questions that couldn't ask today. You can either send them to us via email and we can make the connection with Nick and Paul, or come along to the next month seminar series where there'll be more time for questions there. Or if the question is urgent, you can stay on the call today and hopefully Nick and Paul will be able to answer. Otherwise, I would like to thank you again for coming to talk to us, both Nick and Paul, and thank everybody for joining the call, and hopefully this has been useful for everyone.
Yeah, is that it, or are we staying on? Is there no more questions?
There is no more question I can see, so
all right. Well, thanks for having us, and I hope that Nancy and Giorgio, Luke, get to know that we've all had a good session today.
We'll feed that back for sure.
Okay, bye now. Bye. Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.